That's gonna start spoiling us.
Coming to an end, not because of us, because mayors are moving the folk out of this hotel. I have been accused of being too pessimistic about this in the past, but what I would say is, if we weren't here, there would be more than a dozen or so fascist racists up there. So, because we've been here, we've held them to that number. Yes, there was lots more of them right at the beginning, as were of us. But let's be fair, that was people being bussed in. Once it got down to the locals, we normally count about 16 of them. Most of them will be locals. So if we said a dozen locals, give or take. So yes, it's been successful in confronting them over the year. And I'm not going to say any more. First speaker today is Mike Arnott, who is president of the STUC, and his fallback job is Dundee Trade Union Council. Mike.
I'd like to start by saluting the local activists, trade unionists, citizens of Erskine who have been maintaining this vigil here every week for a year now. It's a tribute to your resilience and your fortitude and the fact that you have the recognition and the understanding that there is a job that needed to be done and that you have been here doing that job. Obviously, as a Trades Council Secretary, I'd like to particularly pay tribute to Paisley Trade Union Council, and obviously they've had support from the Trades Councils of Clydebank and Glasgow as well as everybody here. But it's an indication, and there's a thread here. We see what happened up in Elgin and the leaders that brought together that counter-protest up in Elgin was the Moray Trade Union Council, and there's also outstanding work being done in Dumfries to support a refugee hotel situation, and that's being led by Dumfries Trade Union Council. So as a Trade Union Council activist for many years, it makes me particularly proud of the trade union movement, but also of the role that trade union councils have been playing over the last year, and as I said, not least here in Erskine. But what you're doing here has been actually a physical embodiment of the many tens of thousands of people in Scotland who say that refugees and asylum seekers are welcome here. To show those in the hotel that they are supported, but also the fact that you're here facing up the far right, and to say that their solution, as ever, is no solution at all. The far right, various forms of racism, fascism, they're called the Homeland Party at the moment. Apparently they'd split to become the Homeland Party. I don't know whether they're going to split again to become Home Base and Poundland, but they're, luckily for the movement in Scotland and the UK, the ability of the far right to actually organise and coordinate and not fall out with each other is one of their peripheral persistent weaknesses, which is a benefit for us, and we're quite glad of that. But they come to the fore at times where there are problems, where there are suffering and austerity. They've always done that. They aim to sow disunity amongst ordinary working people, and they do that by scapegoating normally the least powerful. They point the finger and say, these are the people to blame. They did it in the 1930s when we had the black shirts, much better organised than this current mob. But we had the black shirts on the streets in Scotland, in Aberdeen, in Glasgow, in Motherwell, all over. And the black shirts at that time pointed the finger and blamed the Jews. And they said that Hitler was the answer. And we saw what happened with that. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was again 57 varieties of the National Front, the British Movement, the Scottish Defence League, generally blaming our various migrant communities within Scotland and saying that they were to blame. And today, it's the Homeland Party who are blaming folk in this hotel, folk who fled war, folk who fled torture, folk looking for a better life for themselves and their families. And as I said, we welcome them. We say that they have rights to be here, and we will support them and we'll stand by them. Because we know as trade unionists and activists that if there aren't enough homes, it's because the politicians aren't building enough homes. If there are issues with our education and with our health service, it's because politicians aren't investing in them. And that's why Suella Braverman and her right-wing lackeys blame asylum seekers and refugees. It's to deflect attention so that her friends can cut and privatise and profit from our public services. And their dog whistle call out to the Homeland Party as their willing dupes and proxies. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're saying well done to those of you who've been here over the months and weeks and through the rain and through all this weather. And we're here to say, as a trade union movement, as I say, representing the STUC, and I'm proud to say that we can bring that message that refugees are welcome here.
Anyway, next speaker, Dave Moxham, Deputy Secretary, the STUC.
Thanks very much indeed, and I'll keep my speech relatively short because you've heard from the big guy, our president there. What Robert was referring to there, you can look at it two ways. Robert's description is that two great activists from this great struggle and our president weren't allowed into our St Andrew's Day March rally. I put it the other way, which is we organised it so well that there wasn't room for them to come, because we actually did have an amazing day that day, and it was really, really important, and I think great that the work was done to bring many of the refugees who are housed here to that, so that they could see that not just were they getting the support from these local people, but that was part of a bigger and broader support, and that we could rely on our movement to show the love and support that they need, because of course they are victims ultimately of UK, US foreign policy, a foreign policy that has set fires and created wars across the world. And when faced with some of the consequence of the fires and the wars that they created across the world, the worst, of course, which we are currently seeing playing out in the genocide in Gaza, the consequence of that is that people reach your shores. And instead of meeting those people who reach our shores with at least the degree of humility and acceptance that should be the case, they have chosen instead to try and translate those fires into fires across the UK. Fires here, fires in Elgin, fires in Dumfries, in the hope that they can find just enough desperate, mad and stupid people to jump on the bandwagon and sow further division in our community. And what you've done here, guys, is you've maybe not completely extinguished that fire, but it's a pretty damp squib, isn't it? And what the work that you've managed to do here, making that tiny little damp squib not turn into the flames of real conflict in your community, is you've also assisted your comrades and friends in Elgin, in Dumfries, and frankly in other places that we're just finding out about where this challenge will continue. So the challenge won't go away, but the people, the trade unionists, the activists will always be there, and we're stronger for the work that you've done over the past year. And I just want to finish by paying enormous tribute to all of you. I'm on the WhatsApp chat, and your WhatsApp chat is the busiest chat that I've ever seen in my life, and it just goes to show that this isn't just a Sunday thing for you. This hasn't been 52 Sundays, it's been 365 days, and thank you all for the work that you've done, and you can rely on the trade union movement to continue to support you. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave. It's Tam Morrison from Clydebank Trade Union Council.
Thanks, Robert. So solidarity from Clydebank Trade Union Council, and I'd like to join what other speakers have said regards the work and the leadership that's been shown by Paisley Trade Union Council. I think Robert and Dave and other comrades talked about the successes that we've received here. We built up a relationship with the refugees. I think we need to make a sober assessment as well, because I don't think we'll win the politicians' regular engagement here. I mean, the only politician who's been down on a regular basis is Matt Kerr, a councillor from Glasgow. And Matt he's got a piece in today's Morning Star actually on Erskine, and copies are in here if you want, man. But it's I think it's a pretty good assessment of what took place over the last 52 weeks. The other thing is the trade union movement itself. I mean, the STC put on a great event. I think it's back in April, and May was it. And I know that they've tried to engage the local branches here to come on a regular basis, but to be truthful, I think we've failed in that. It's apart from the trades councils, it's been Unite Community that came on a regular basis. And the thing is that we do a lot of street work in Clydebank, and low-level racism is so widespread. We've talked to people who agree with you on the economic issues, about cuts to local services, etc. And you think, that's great, we're winning them over. And then the next breath they come out and blame, these people come over their boats. And so it's a difficult argument you've got to try and win. And I think the trade union movement and the politicians have got to step up to the plate. And that's no bad reflection, obviously, the comments who have came here on a regular basis. I think I'd finish by saying that when the refugees finally move out of the hotel, we've got to make sure that that's not finished. A lot of effort's been put in over the last year, and we've got to make sure there's a base in the community to discuss the root issues, the root causes that Mike talked about and Dave talked about. It's caused it gives them agenda for their politics and their hatred, and that's obviously with the cuts that's been made to local community facilities. So certainly a thing we've tried to do in Western Bartonshire, and I know that the attempts here to do it locally as well, we've got to build these links, the trade union links within the communities, and that's the role of the trades councils, to take the politics and the policies of the trade union movement into the community and make sure that they're addressing the root causes of racism, which is obviously blaming people for liquor facilities. So I think that's the main point. That's the legacy we want to leave as a base in the community, Robert and Colin, where the trade unions are working closely with the people in the community. So thanks very much for listening.
Thanks, Dan. I had something in my head there. I did remember what I was thinking of earlier, and there are a group in the country that I really, really hate and despise, and I wish they would all go away. We all know them, they're Tories. Keith's on it.
I don't like the idea of me following Tories, to be honest. That's actually a slur. Obviously, I'm speaking on behalf of Unite Community West of Scotland, and I think there hasn't been a weekend where at least one or two members, and often a lot more, have been here. We managed even to get the establishment of Unite to actually allow us to use the minibus and such like, and that has made getting folk here much, much easier. And that's one of the things is that although we've been here defending the migrants and defending them against the folk over there, the truth is that this is a totally inappropriate place to house anyone. There are no facilities. As somebody who's tried to get here in public transport, and well done the comrade who came down from Dundee in public transport and got here before a lot of us, well done that. But the fact is, even though it's inappropriate, and even though we don't want them to be stuck in hotels but to have proper housing, the fact is, if the right rise, we have to oppose them. And we have to be in between the migrants and the right. And that's been a consistent theme by the trade union movement throughout history, about looking after those at the bottom, those who don't have a voice, and those who, if they do have a voice and fight back, can actually end up worsening their situation because they don't get the opportunity to get settled status. It was trade unionists that went to Spain. But in actual fact, it's quite significant. In our first anniversary here, there was actually another battle 50 years ago this year, and it happened in Glasgow. It was at the Kingston Halls, where Glasgow Trades Council called a demonstration that had 800 people outside the Kingston Halls, and the police battered their way through them, arrested 100, and it was in order to let, I think it was the National Front at that point, have an election meeting. It was the second election of 74. Good quiz question, what year we had 2 elections? But anyway, we are consistent, we are standing in the shadow of the folk who have gone before us, but we have an important task beyond standing here. We have to be getting into our branches, into our communities, and unravelling the lies about refugees and start telling them the truth. That folk are stuck out here, less than 10 quid a week, not particularly nice conditions, and that we have a job within the labour and trade union movement to make sure that we can get to the position again when a trades council calls a demonstration. It's not the few dozen that we've had throughout the year, that there's 800 here, and put a stop to their nonsense, nip it in the bud at the very beginning. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been a privilege to be here. But I won't be saddened when the refugees are rehoused elsewhere in more appropriate accommodation, hopefully. But that does not mean the end of the struggle in Erskine. What we have to do is make sure that the fight against the cuts here, the fight for better amenities for the local folk within Erskine and every other community in Scotland is what we need to do. And I think it's been disappointing, and you know, quite correctly, Matt has been singled out as a councillor for Glasgow being here. But it's also sick, and I see Rosa's here as well, and that's good and that's appropriate. But what I think is one of the most disgusting things that's happened in the communications to and from the local council was in the run-up to Christmas, where we were hoping to get some festive cheer, if you like, and we approached the local council. The response was they thought it unlikely that many of the residents would want to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, which was, I thought, quite ironic. A, that they would assume that everyone in the hotel was not Christian, that everybody in hell was Muslim, and also that somebody who was born in a stable and got very little help and aid and support at the time, though he did get some good presents a fortnight later. But initially he wasn't treated particularly well. That in actual fact, I think for those who are of faith, they would be standing here and have been standing here with us. And that's an additional strength, that we've pulled in people who don't normally agree on everything, but we agree in the core values. So that's the message that I'm going to take away. That's what I'm going to take away from here. because we are all in it together. Thanks to everybody who's come every week. Thanks to those who have come occasionally when they could, and thanks for being here today. And I think it's important it's maybe not a victory that we hoped for, but the fact that we're still here and we're forcing them into a corner. They don't even have a speaker anymore, and I think we need to buy a new one. Yeah, it's been good, and it'll continue to be good. And you need to continue to support this venture, but more importantly, you need to get into your workplace and the communities and root out the cancer of racism. Cheers.
I don't need to introduce Colin Mack, President, Chairperson of Paisley and District Trade Union Council.
Thanks, Robert. But I want to thank everyone again for turning out. It's been certainly an interesting year. I can remember when the rumours started circulating about the hotel on Facebook and hearing some conversation in the local community, and I couldn't believe some of the language that was getting used. The concerns, some of the concerns were genuine, but the lack of consultation, let's be fair here, because there wasn't any from the Home Office. But a lot of them were just basically baseless accusations. And we've seen that as the year's gone out, that they've tried everything. They've claimed incidents in buses that turn out not to be true. They've claimed incidents and people sitting at a park bench watching a pub or apparently staring at a kids' play park and all other kinds of nonsense that if you stayed in Erskine, you realise this just wasn't true. The concerns have been unfounded. There's been no issue with the hotel apart from litter. And I mean, half that litter wasn't even their litter. So it's literally a case of it's been absolutely fantastic that we've been able to show up and support the residents, support the people in the hotel, and show that Erskine is not a community filled with hatred. And let's look at it now. We're down to a rump. Of a town of 16,000 people, we've got a dozen racists. It's not much, is it? But we're right. If we hadn't taken this stand, if we hadn't fought, if we hadn't stood and turned up, that dozen could have been far more. It could have led to far worse incidents and far more hatred. And as an Erskine resident and someone who's lived here his entire life, I went to school here, I grew up here, and I was taught to love all people, to appreciate people, and to treat them well, and to stand against fascism. And my granddad used to say that. He fought in World War II, and he said, you know what, don't think it won't happen here, because it can. So it's important that we as a movement, we stand together, we stand with each other, and we support each other. And we keep campaigning, and we keep fighting. We stand at Erskine, Elgin, Dumfries, everywhere else, and we show them that their hatred, their bigotry, that's not part of Scotland. That's not part of us. We are the Scottish. The people in the hotel, they will be the Scottish, and we will go move forward together, and we'll make a better society. And the hate can be left in the past where it belongs. Thank you.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.